Service, a wonderful opportunity. I am waiting for my cappuccino, standing at the bar. Next to me, an attractive young woman with red hair and freckles, clearly a foreigner, has also ordered a cappuccino. Serving at the bar is a young man with curly dark hair. With an air of nonchalance, he places her cup down. It has lovely froth with a perfect creamy heart in the middle. I peek at her reaction and notice her surprise. She is not used to receiving a heart for breakfast. The barman says nothing, does not even look at her. Then my cappuccino arrives. No heart, just a banal cappuccino like any other. Simply a drink, no love message. I must admit a slight feeling of envy for those two. But that is not the point. What is important lies in their interior, secret world. I do not know the sequel to this episode and can only guess. The more cynical hypothesis is that the barman does the same trick many times a day whenever a good-looking girl comes along, and that sooner or later he scores with one of them, and that the redhead, accustomed to flattery, makes nothing much of it. But I do not really believe it went like that. I prefer to think that when the woman left the bar and walked the tourist circuit of the town, often so anonymous and cold to its teeming visitors, in a light-hearted mood. Perhaps that day she took in more of the town's beauty and felt happier, and all because, in one of its infinite possibilities and assuming the improbable form of a cappuccino, the spirit of love had reached her. Perhaps the woman with the red hair will remember this small episode for many years, because when someone, in his own way, is kind to us, it is likely we will remember it for a long time, maybe forever. For instance, when I was a child, my mother and my aunt took my sister and me on a journey across the United States. In those days, a trip like that was rare. America was an unfamiliar continent, perhaps even a little dangerous, or so we felt. For someone traveling there for the first time and not knowing the language well. We crossed the country by rail and had to change trains in Chicago. When we arrived there, we realized not only that the trains belonged to two different companies, but also that the arrival of the one and the departure of the next were at two different stations. We had just 1 hour for changing trains in a place where everything was unfamiliar. This became an extraordinary adventure. We made it just in time. And the part that will remain forever impressed in my memory took place in a creaky, wobbly elevator, so slow its descent seemed endless. There we were, 2 women and 2 children, all 4 of us lost and scared. I remember that several people spoke to us, made us feel welcome, and told us where to go and what to do. Some talked to my sister and me, and one person even gave her a rag doll, pulled out from who knows where. That trip in the creaky elevator was in another dimension, far from timetables and from hurry, where we met people who gave us serenity. Many years later, I still recall it with gratitude. What interests me most in stories such as these, and in so many others you and I can recall, is the fantastic variety of ways we all have for making another human being feel better. Let us look at a few examples. A friend makes a joke that lifts your spirits. You need time and tranquility. A kind soul offers to look after your children, tidy your house, and prepare dinner. You have a terrible toothache, and a dentist fixes the problem quickly and painlessly. Someone listens to you and understands you fully. You feel at peace with yourself. A teacher or therapist or spiritual guide stimulates in you capabilities you never knew you had. A book opens you to new perspectives. At a concert, the music is so beautiful, it moves and transforms you. And so on. There are infinite ways, implicit or explicit, microscopic or gigantic, episodic or lasting, superficial or substantial, of bringing into the life of another person some benefit, relief, cheerfulness, hope, well-being, intellectual or spiritual growth, ecstasy. This kind of relationship is no angelic exception in a sordid world of selfish and wearing individuals. It is, on the contrary, a normal event, often a part of our everyday interactions. At the base of kindness, it is service. Happily, service is also in the little things, the tiniest ones, to hold the door open for someone, to give warm appreciation, to offer your seat on the bus. A Hebrew story tells of Reb Nachum, a selfish businessman who thinks only of making money and swindling others. One night, on his way home in a carriage, he sees by the roadside a poor farmer whose cart has wound up with its wheel in the mud. The farmer is pushing, but by himself he cannot get the cart back on the road. He is dressed in his very best for the Sabbath, but he is exhausted and distressed because he cannot move his cart. Reb Nachum gets out of the carriage and helps the farmer push. With the two of them, it is easy work and the problem is resolved. As they are saying goodbye, Reb Nachum notices a bit of mud on the farmer's clothes, and almost without thinking, he removes it with a flick of his hand. "Now you are ready for the Sabbath feast," he says, and leaves. He goes back to his normal life. Many years later, Reb Nachum dies and arrives at God's judgment. The accusing angel on one side, the defending angel on the other. The accusing angel examines his life and finds a lot of material. Reb Nachum has devoted himself only to amassing wealth, never to care of his wife and family. He had no friends, did not help the community, committed dishonest acts, and abused his power. The angel puts it all on the accusing side of the scale, and the balance weighs heavily to that side. The angel of mercy doesn't know what to do. He looks over and over at Reb Nachum's life, finding nothing good, not a kind word, no act of solidarity. Suddenly, he sees the one kind act of moving the cart. In desperation, he takes the whole cart and throws it on the scales. The balance swings to and fro, for a moment seeming to stay in equilibrium, then weighing once more toward the accusing side. The angel does not know what more to do, then at last sees the bit of mud Reb Nachum had brushed off the farmer's clothes, a tiny forgotten act of kindness. So the angel takes the little lump of mud and throws that, too, on the defense side of the scales. Miracle, the balance shifts. Reb Nachum is saved. You never know. A size small service can yield results extra large. It is easy to think of service as sacrifice because it takes our time and energy, but often it is just the opposite. Service is advantageous to those who do it, not only to those who receive it. The world of business is finding this by way of systematic study and scientific rigor. An increasing amount of research confirms the obvious fact that service is good business. Treating clients well raises the probability that they will like you and come back. The reverse is equally true. How often have we had to wait for ages at a restaurant before being served, or been treated with a couldn't care less attitude by a shop assistant, or bought an item we thought was of good quality, only to find out it was a piece of junk? A firm has everything to gain by respecting clients. Its task is to reduce the terrorists, unsatisfied customers who, besides not coming back, spread the bad word about that firm. It turns out that unsatisfied clients speak of a negative experience to 19 people on average. The other task is to increase the number of apostles, satisfied clients who not only come back, but also do free advertising. It seems that the factors most efficacious in making clients come back are keeping one's word, delivering the goods, being flexible with unusual requests, helping those who need help, being friendly and warm, putting the client at ease, being honest, never lying, showing kindness, treating clients with courtesy and respect. Of course, treating clients well so that they come back is not disinterested kindness. It is just knowing how to do good business. Yet I am convinced that a interested kindness is better than disinterested rudeness. And B, those who pretend to be kind find so many advantages in this attitude that they often end up being kind for real. Like all good things, however, service also comes with a multitude of dangers and gremlins. The most common one is charging, attaching a price to the good that is done, and then presenting the bill. Even years later, in my work as a psychotherapist, as I listen to clients talk about their parents, one grievance comes up more than any other. And what is it? Pressure? Mistreatment? Negligence? Humiliation? Threat? These certainly abound. But the most common complaint is leveled at parents who remind their children of all that they have done for them. To hear the list of favors, sacrifices, and efforts committed on their behalf is an intolerable ordeal. Nonetheless, it is natural that parents want their children not to take all their work for granted. The job of a parent is hard, unacknowledged, and unpaid, and in the end, the kids are often not even grateful for it. How is it, then, that their reaction is so strong? Because once upon a time their service was disinterested, but now it has become an instrument for retort. In this way, all the goodness of the past is eliminated with one blow. It works like this. Again and again, you receive what you believe is an act of gratuitous kindness. And then later, with an unexpected posthumous rereading, you find out that you have to pay. It is like making love passionately, then finding out that it was a professional performance, and here is the bill. A spontaneous gift has become an item in a budget. Its original beauty has suddenly vanished. Let us think of the opposite situation. Someone helps you, and far from reminding you of it, she does not even mention the good she has done, perhaps because she is already busy doing more good somewhere else. This person does not take herself too seriously. She is not heavy and solemn and may even be humorous. And if no one points out to you the favor you have received, you have a greater capacity to enjoy it since you do not feel in debt or guilty or in need of defending yourself. Perhaps you will never notice what, through effort, devotion, possibly even risk, has been done for you. Too bad. But no one grabs you by the collar asking for payment. You have more space inside, and therefore you will be more likely one day, maybe in the distant future, to suddenly realize the goodness you were given and feel arising in you a spontaneous feeling of gratitude. Another problem, transforming service, which in essence is the forgetting of self, into an opportunity for showing how clever we are. Placing ourselves at the center and making gratitude to us a duty. It makes others feel like they are in one of those houses where the walls are covered in diplomas and certificates, photographs of the owner of the company of famous people in the company of famous people, special edition books to show off high culture, and generally all that could celebrate the greatness and importance of the host. You are just about forced to admire. But do you feel uplifted, enriched, or nourished? No way. In any case, the metaphor of the house is appropriate for representing relationships. Imagine now that the house, rather than being pretentious and self-centered, is a sinister and inhospitable place. Watch out. There's a rusty nail sticking out and a loose floorboard. You could hurt yourself. The paintings on the wall are anguish-inducing. Some rooms are off limits. The chairs are uncomfortable. Or imagine a depressing house where you read dejection everywhere. Dust, disorder, and dismay are all over the place. Then there are also happy homes where the atmosphere is full of warmth and you feel at ease the moment you enter. You are offered food and drink, and you find all kinds of interesting stimuli everywhere. Books, pictures, statuettes. You feel welcome. Homes are like people, and service is not just what you do, but what you are. Sometimes certain people, by their mere presence, make us feel better, more in contact with ourselves, happier. At other times, they have an equally good but more intellectual effect. When I was at high school, I had a great philosophy teacher. He barely followed the curriculum. He would reproach those who learned their work by rote and praised anyone coming up with an original thought. Books and journals with the capacity to move and to transform were far more interesting to him than compulsory texts. He spoke of current events, politics, contemporary thought, or his personal history as a freedom fighter. During his classes, everyone's attention was always alive. These lessons had an extraordinary effect on me. They taught me that I could think with my own head. It was like discovering that till then I had existed in a small attic of a huge house, but that in fact the entire house was mine, and now I could go into all the rooms. While before I would follow thoughts that were served to me like dinner on the table, almost from one day to the next I discovered in myself the capacity to think. This novelty put me in conflict with some authorities, but it was a wonderful gift. And it all happened not so much because of any particular piece of teaching, but through the intellectual vitality the professor was able to transmit. During World War II, he had participated in the Italian Resistenza, fighting against the fascists and the Nazis. His loathing of any form of authoritarianism and dictatorship his passion for liberty and freedom of thought, for which he had risked his life more than once, had so become part of his being that perhaps even without realizing it, he communicated these values and infected everyone with them. Here we see a basic fact. We transmit what we are, and we are what we have worked to become. The philosophy professor transmitted his passion for liberty and his intellectual vitality because he had cultivated them for many years, and because he had been ready to risk his life to save and honor those values. Had they been less important for him, he would not have been able to convey them. Let us look at this process step by step. 1. At any moment of our lives, requests for help and occasions for service all about us abound. We have only to look. The kids need help with homework, a passerby needs directions to the station, the endangered natural environment is crying out in pain, or an old person, forgotten by everybody, is dying. 2. If we do not respond to these requests, we will probably feel ill at ease. If we do respond, we will have to develop the ability to satisfy them. We need patience to help the children. We need the appropriate knowledge to help nature. We have to be able to find the old person who is dying alone. Or we simply need to know the way to the station. 3. The process for discovering and developing abilities and knowledge for doing useful work takes a lifetime and arouses in us unsuspected potential. It involves not only knowing the way to the station, but also the ability to say it clearly and the kindness to stop and explain, even when in a hurry and sacrificing precious time. We are all offering the products of our work. If I have to give a lecture that is to be useful in some way to those who hear it, I first have to study and research my subject, ask myself what would strike my audience as interesting, produce some original thoughts on the matter. I also have to overcome the anxiety of speaking in public, develop the capacity to enter into a relationship with my listeners, and create a pleasant and stimulating atmosphere. If, say, I am working with the dying, I have to have faced to some extent my own anxieties about death. I have to learn to be present even when I feel like running away. Accept the most unpleasant aspects of sickness. I have to be at ease with intimacy, and so on. This whole process changes me, enriches me, and places me more in contact with all my faculties. 4. To offer something useful to someone can reward us personally. We may receive gratitude and admiration and go home satisfied. But very often it does not happen like that. Millions of parents have done a lot for their children, but the children grow up and mistreat or forget them. Doctors, teachers, nurses, tradesmen have devoted their lives to serving the litigious, demanding public, which takes their service and spirit of sacrifice for granted. A cook might take hours to prepare a delicious dinner, but the customers devour it in minutes and do not even pay him a compliment. Many volunteer workers regularly face waiting, boredom, ingratitude, and even hostility. This is the decisive stage of service, because it is here that we are put to the test. If our true goal is to gain admiration and recognition, show how good we are, or collect brownie points, sooner or later we will give up. If instead the motivation is to help someone heal, feel better, find herself, know what to do, and make progress in her growth, then we will continue. Service helps us purify our own motivation, become disinterested, and therefore freer. This is the sequence. Now, I think one fact is evident. Service helps not only the receiver, but also the server. Whoever offers service must improve himself in order to do what has to be done, must think about others rather than only about himself. He learns. He finds value in what he does. Thus his self-esteem grows, and he is able to find meaning in his life. He enters into relation with another human being, and if, inevitably, he meets frustration, failure, or ingratitude, his motivation is put to the test, and he has the possibility of emerging stronger for it. Serving others brings about the best in ourselves. This is apparent even in small episodes of everyday life. I once knew by sight a person in my neighborhood who had a bad reputation. He was a bulky man of about 30, with an ape-like appearance. He would walk around grim-faced, scaring people by his very demeanor. I had heard he had been in trouble with the law. People would steer clear of him, eye him suspiciously. One day, when I was in a hurry for an appointment, my tire blew just as I was leaving. I started to use the jack, but found it was faulty. As I dithered on the roadside, my anxiety rose, and who should drive by but this man? He offered to help, and after a moment of hesitation, I accepted. In no time at all, he changed my tire. What struck me then was how he had completely changed. In a few seconds, an asocial, possibly dangerous creature had become a smiling example of human kindness. Very little was necessary to bring out the best in him, the best that perhaps no one knew, perhaps not even he. And this happened because he felt he could be useful. There are many studies that show the positive effects altruistic service has on the server. Altruistic service is beneficial to cardiac patients, for instance, because it fights two big dangers, depression and isolation. Among veterans of the Vietnam War, it was found that those with an altruistic disposition were less subject to post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition that can affect a patient for years. In another study, volunteers for a risky biomedical study still had greater self-esteem 20 years after the study had finished. In yet another research on volunteer work, 6 aspects of personal well-being were measured: happiness, satisfaction in life, self-esteem, sense of being able to control one's own life, physical health, and absence of depression. All had increased in subjects who had done volunteer work. But the most important effect goes way beyond the tangible benefits and statistical data. It is a profound change that occurs in us. What emerges is the basic attitude of being open and sensitive to the needs and problems of others, and thus ready to do something to help in both small and big matters. For example, one day when I was still living in town, the doorbell rang and when I opened the door, an elderly man told me, "You left your headlights on." "Thank you, but how did you know it was my car and that I live here?" It turned out he had looked inside the car, seen a letter on the car seat with my name and address on it. I can imagine this scenario for myself. I am passing by and I see a parked car with the lights on. Do I keep going, thinking I am glad it did not happen to me? Or do I, like this man, go to the trouble of doing something about it, realizing that in this moment life has brought me an opportunity. I can choose to act. Tomorrow another opportunity will arise. A friend will be feeling lonely. There will be a dinner to cook, a scared child to comfort. I will be ready. It is a basic attitude in which, to some extent, we transcend ourselves. Our needs, worries, gripes are temporarily put to one side. We forget them for a while because there is work to be done elsewhere. And it is exactly this capacity of self-transcendence that helps us, because it frees us from the prison of our own ego. We are usually shut in with everything that makes us hope and suffer, the prison of our ego. In the end, however, interesting it might be, it will limit the and oppress us. If it is full of nightmares and terrible memories, we will go mad. Then we find a key to get out, looking after others, being interested in their predicament, making contact, and that is the key to our own freedom. But there are still more difficulties. Sometimes service runs into the belief that all we can possibly do is useless, that we live in a world full of injustice, abuse of power, sickness, unhappiness of such huge dimensions that whatever we do will only have a fleeting, insignificant effect or no effect at all, and that, whether we like it or not, we are useless. Sooner or later, service brings us face to face with our ability to influence the lives of others. Are we able to change their lives for the better, or are we impotent to do anything about their predicament? Maybe we ought to think in another, deeper way and realize that we live in a world of subtle interactions and unpredictable turns of events. In a story the Buddha told, a parrot wants to save the animals of a forest trapped by a terrible fire. The parrot dives into the river, then flies over the fire, beating its wings, hoping the few drops that fall on the fire might put it out. Just so, we are aware that our few drops cannot save the world. The fire grows bigger and bigger. It is a merciless threat. The animals scream in fright. The parrot, covered in soot, is exhausted from its continuous efforts. We, too, sometimes find ourselves in awful and insoluble situations, problems bigger than we are. The parrot continues, and after some time, the gods, so often distracted and indifferent to earthly suffering, are moved by the goodwill and heroism of the parrot. These tears falling on the earth become rain, a benevolent rain that puts out the fire, a miraculous balm that saves the terrified animals. Over the devastating fury of the fire, the dedication of a tiny parrot emerged as winner. It was the triumph of the heart.